Jonathan, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
What brings you to Global Offshore 2016?
Well, we're here because it's a great opportunity to meet other players in the industry, fellow developers, some of our key suppliers, catch up with some government officials, etc. It's a good place to meet everyone, talk about the big issues in the industry, celebrate some of the successes of the industry, and look forward to the challenges that we've got to overcome.
How much offshore do you have?
So in ScottishPower, we've got one project which is operating in the Irish Sea just now. We're building a project right now in the German Baltic Sea, Wikinger, and we're just about to start building our first East Anglia project in the next couple of years in the southern North Sea.
So exciting times for you.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've grown this business over the past 5 or 6 years. We've grown from a business which was more or less worth about €6 million into a business which now has €6 billion of equity invested. So it's quite a spectacular growth story over a short period of time.
Has that been a sudden acceleration, or has it just been a gradual ramp up?
It's been part of a plan. I mean, what happened when I took over this business 6 years ago, we set out a 10-year plan which was really focusing on 4 core projects, the one in the Irish Sea, the one in the German Baltic Sea, the first of the East Anglia projects, and a project in France. And really the idea was over that 10-year period to install all 4 of those projects. So that's about an €8 billion investment programme over 10 years. And we're right on track, which is quite impressive considering how challenging the macroeconomic climate has been.
So you're 8 years into your 10-year plan.
We're 6 years into a 10-year plan.
Okay.
And
6 years into a 10-year plan.
We're now talking about extending that by another.
Yeah, so what next?
Well, exactly. I mean, the great thing actually for our business is we've got a very healthy pipeline of projects. So after this first East Anglia project, which is a 714 megawatt project, we've actually got 3 further projects, all of which are bigger than that. One of those is in the consenting process right now. The other 2 are going through the environmental phase. So we will be able to be building these East Anglia projects for most of the next decade, provided the market conditions are right. And the great thing about East Anglia actually is that it's a physically perfect place to build offshore wind. So if you look at the things that matter, wind speed, water depth, seabed conditions, distance from shore, perfect climate conditions in East Anglia. And all of the projects are very physically similar. So it's an ideal place to get something right, repeat it, optimise it, perfect place to drive costs down, perfect place to drive industrialisation up. So it's a huge opportunity for us and for the whole industry.
In terms of turbine sizes, where do you see that going?
Well, I think that the only way that this industry is going to achieve the cost reduction targets that we now need to achieve, which is to be somewhere around about £80 in the middle of the next decade, is if we have bigger turbines again. So we've just brought to the market the 8 megawatt, 7 megawatt size turbines, earlier probably than people would have thought a few years ago, but sorry to say that's not enough. We need to now be starting to look to the next chapter, and I think we've got to have double-digit sized turbines, 10 megawatt plus turbines out there by 2020 if we're going to take the cost reduction to the next level.
Do you think there's been a sudden acceleration, or do you think you're just coming up to the start line and now is the time for the acceleration of the industry?
I mean, I think it's been a steady build-up of projects. What's happening now has been a long time coming. Probably it's a bit slower getting started than people hope because of regulatory and macroeconomic issues. But yeah, I think we're seeing a steady growth in the industry. And I mean, you have to look back and say how much has been achieved. It's quite phenomenal. So we're looking at an industry now that by 2020 is going to be a £30 billion industry in the UK, employing tens of thousands of people, providing electricity for 8 million homes. So it's a spectacular growth story already, and the future potential beyond that is incredible.
The other good news story, of course, is the employment that you just alluded to. So new areas being regenerated as a consequence of new industry coming in, the green industry coming in. What are your feelings on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of the great opportunities of offshore wind is it is revitalising the economy. So we're investing in these huge infrastructure projects. We're stimulating investment in the supply chain. We're stimulating investment in ports, and what are probably quite disadvantaged coastal communities are now being revitalised thanks to the investments we're making in offshore wind. And along the way, we're creating tens of thousands of high quality jobs. So it's a really, I think, motivating factor that we're doing something good for the energy sector, good for our own company, but also good for the wider society.
Last year, offshore wind generated 12% of the UK's energy. What do you think it's going to be next year and the year after?
Well, I think we're going to see that steadily grow because we're seeing a steady rate of growth in the capacity of offshore wind. So I'd say, by the end of the decade, you're probably talking about 20%, 25% of the electricity in this country is going to be generated from offshore wind, which is incredible. When you look back 5 years ago where we were, that's a phenomenal achievement.
What about the convergence of public attitudes and levelised cost?
So, I think one thing I will say for the offshore wind industry is we anticipated well ahead of any of the other low carbon technologies the need for cost reduction. 5 years ago, we set ourselves a target, a very ambitious target at the time, of £100 by 2020, and probably we're going to achieve that several years earlier than 2020. So I think it's ingrained in the DNA of this industry that we need to keep reducing costs, and we need a plan to do that to get us to that point of £80 or less by the middle of the next decade, and because at that point we become cheaper than all of the other big scale low carbon generation technologies like nuclear and gas. And that's the point at which we're not a subsidised industry, we are a competitive industry competing against all the other technologies in an open market.
Next steps?
Next steps for us is to build our German project, our East Anglia project, and to keep that pipeline of projects in France and Germany and East Anglia going into the next decade. Next step for the industry, I think, is to take the investment that's in front of us from now to 2020 and really use that in an efficient way, clever way, to drive up UK industrial benefit and drive down cost.
And what's most exciting you?
I think what excites me about this industry is the opportunity that it creates up and down the country for jobs and investment, and people's lives are being improved thanks to the investment that we're making. So it's very easy to be enthusiastic about working in this industry. It's a tough industry, but it's a very, very rewarding industry to be in.
What does the future hold?
I think the future's absolutely fantastic for offshore wind. We're going to double in size from now to 2020, and we'll probably double in size again between 2020 and 2030 in the UK, all the while creating tens of thousands of jobs, delivering clean green energy across the country, powering the economy, moving the country forward.
Exciting times.
Very exciting times.
Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.